Good evening. It is 6 o'clock on Monday, April 28th. I'll call to order the Traffic Safety Commission. Recognize that we have a quorum, barely, but we are missing Jim Wingate, Dave Allman, and Boyd Janto, who have been excused, Alderman Schmidt, Tom Hopp, Mike Hillsley, and myself will proceed with the meeting. Excuse me. First, before we start the meeting, as always, I'd like to just remind the Commission of our powers and duties as defined by ordinance. The Commission shall investigate, advise, and report to the Mayor, the Common Council, and any other city official concerning the best methods of providing for traffic safety and for the orderly flow of traffic throughout the city. In making such recommendations, the Commission shall make recommendations consistent with the Wisconsin Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And with that, we'll move to our first order of business, which is an approval of the minutes. Motion from Alderman Schmidt.
I'll second.
Second from Tom Hopp. Any corrections, deletions, or additions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And that carries. Second item is the, we're going to have a reordering. We're going to take item 5 first due to a schedule conflict with Alderman Bushlick. So our first item will be then number 5, to consider a request to install no parking bus loading zone signage in front of Holy Angels on the west side of 8th Avenue from 225 feet south of the center line of Cedar Street to 150 feet north of the center line of Elm Street. Kevin?
Good evening. My name is Kevin Wayner. I'm with KL Engineering, and we were contracted by the city of West Bend to investigate each of the items that were included in the tech memo that should have been in the packet for this meeting. And so that includes item 5 that the chief just teed up for us. So this is on 8th Avenue where there is the Holy Angels School. Buses typically drop off in front of the school, from my understanding. But as of right now, the west side of the street where the buses queue up is actually no parking 24/7. This street is one that has 2-hour parking on the east side with residential houses on the east side. And so we conducted a field review and we measured the width of the roadway to be 35 feet from the curb face to curb face. And we also did some research on kind of what the parking requirements for school pickup and drop off would be, including the dimensions of buses. And so the request was to sign bus loading zone on the west side of the street. With the existing parking on the east side of the street, however, the first thing that we found was assuming about 10 feet for a bus, you're left with 25 feet, and then you subtract 7 to 9 feet, so call it 8 feet from that 25 feet, and you're left with about 18 feet of roadway width, which is about 9 feet per direction of travel because it's a 2-way roadway. That's a very narrow roadway, especially when you've got parked cars and you want people to be able to see any pedestrian that were to pop out there. It's also just much more narrow than any kind of recommendation would be for a roadway width or a lane width. And so our recommendation was to, at the base of our recommendation was to make sure that there's enough room for 2-way traffic. So that would be that anytime the bus loading zone is active, to remove parking on the opposite side of the street. In addition, our recommendation included extending the no parking on the east side of the street so that you don't have a situation where buses are parked and then the opposite side of the street there's a car parked. There's not enough room for vehicles to kind of weave through those changing conditions. And so we recommended a 50-foot buffer on either end. And so there was some discussion after the memo was submitted to truncate the distance that we had recommended for the bus parking. We had recommended 3 buses. There was kind of some back and forth to reduce that. And so the engineering that we did primarily just focuses on the roadway width and that buffered length. So That's our recommendation right now.
Okay, so
Any
Kevin,
questions?
your recommendation would be for the commission to recommend establishing a bus stop zone on the west side for 3 bus lengths,
Yes, that's the recommendation in the memo.
and on the east side to change from the 2-hour parking restriction to no parking during school hours.
Correct. With 50 feet of buffer on either end of the corresponding bus loading zone.
I recognize that the commission's in a tough spot to decide whether or not to move that motion forward without having all the information, without having the public comment.
I'd like to hear from the public.
You know, Robert's Rule of Orders would say we take the motion, but we're more of an exploratory commission to gather that information. So I think I'll take some liberties as the chair if the commission doesn't mind, and we'll get some public comments so we can understand. Maybe first, John, if you'd like to come up and explain why Holy Angels is asking for this.
Yeah, thank you. My name is John Butchlick. Holy Angels has been requested through the bus depot that when they drop off kids, obviously other parents are parking in that section where the drop-off is. And the request was to have no parking for buses only in that area that is set in between the front of Holy Angels and up to the glass walkway. There is a section of glass walkway and a lobby entrance, and that area is where they normally drop off their students in the morning and pick up in the afternoon. So our request was to have a no parking sign for or buses only, and no parking for vehicles just during school hours. And then I noticed that the 2-hour parking on the other side, the reason for that was years ago, Restat was using that side for their employees. Restat no longer there. That could be, and I agree with no parking on the east side of the road there, and obviously the small section where the buses park would be just no parking just during school hours. Once school is closed, then you can park in there at any time. And same thing in the evenings. Now I know school is only open from 7:45 until 2:50. After 2:50, then that opens up that street that anybody can park at any time. So it would be only just between the hours of 7:45 and 2:50 where that section would be. We're asking that section be closed so traffic can flow either way easily and we don't have kids crossing the street. Would also keep some of our parents from parking on the west side during that time to pick up their kids, because that becomes dangerous, and we want to make sure that we protect our kids.
Thanks, John. Just to clarify, the engineering report was based on 3 buses for field trips, I believe was the...
That's correct, yeah. When we have a field trip, it would be 3 buses, but they don't usually take very many field trips anymore. You may have 1 or 2 field trips a year. So if that would become an issue and we wanted to shrink that to just 2 buses, that would not be an issue. If we end up having a field trip where we have 3 buses, they would more than likely probably use it on the west side of the on the west side of the school, where they could pick them up in the parking lot and all the kids come. So the 3 buses we could get away with without having. 2 is the normal 2 that comes for daily drop-off and daily pickup.
Questions for John at all? Mike?
So you said school is over at 2:50,
That's correct.
so that's when the kids are actually exiting the school?
Yep, that's correct.
So realistically, we would probably want it to extend past that point, if that's what you're
Yes,
thinking?
yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What time do the kids allowed into the school, or what time do the buses arrive in the morning?
The buses usually arrive in the morning about 7:40, 7:45.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So is it reasonable to assume that most of the kids will be gone by 3 o'clock or 3:30?
Yes, by 3 o'clock, everybody's gone. That's correct.
Just for the commission's knowledge, we have several, like Cabrini, for example, has a similar no parking during school hours. Our enforcement, school hours means when children are present for a normal school day, so it wouldn't be tied to a 7:45 to 2:50. It would be 7:30 to 3, or whatever would be a reasonable period when the children were there loading and unloading. That's a good question, though. And then, John, just to clarify, you stated very well. I'll just clarify maybe for the public and people watching at home. Right now, the east side of North 8th Avenue from Elm to Cedar is 2-hour parking, and that's 2-hour parking 24/7. That's at night, that's on weekends. If we make this move, we'd be freeing up street parking outside of school hours, weekends, nights. We would be removing that 2-hour time limit.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Thank you. Questions? I know we have some members of the public that are here to speak to this. If you wish to speak to the parking issue in front of us now, please come up to the podium, state your name very clearly and your address, and we'll have it open for comment.
Hello, I'm Kevin Langenecker. My address is actually 825 Redwood Street, but I am an owner on 8th Avenue there at 825. I have a duplex. So I apologize, I'm not a public speaker, nor is my handwriting good. And I guess, I'm glad there's not a time constraint. I have a lot to say. And I appreciate everyone being here, your commitment to the communities and everyone's concern. I'm glad you did mention that there's 2 buses and the measurements of the street, Cedar Street's 35 feet wide, or 8th Avenue is 35 feet wide. One thing I'd like to point out is Cedar Street, just to the north of the school, has a beautiful 145-foot section, and it is 45 feet wide with no parking on the other side. A bus is 45 feet long, so they would fit there beautifully without abrupting any other issues. So obviously the real issue is the parking on 8th Avenue there, taking away from those residents. And as much as you're just talking about school hours, this would disturb their evenings before, including Sunday nights, when they should be with their family. There's 10 properties on that street, and it is a heavily densely populated block. 3 of those center properties are duplexes, and they are only 0.1 acre lots. They only have 40 feet of frontage, and they don't have a lot of parking. Those garages some of them were built in the 1800s. They're not designed for modern day cars. I have a lot more to say, but I feel like that's about the most of it here. Hopefully I could be invited back up if I have something else to say. Any questions of me?
So your residence, that's 2-hour parking on that side of the street currently, right?
It is.
And if I am understanding this correctly, this would open it up for the non-school times that there would be no time limits on it. Wouldn't that be a benefit to your renters and to the residents there?
It would not necessarily be. It is a heavily densely populated area. There's a 10-unit apartment complex on the corner, also with our 3 duplexes in the center of that block. You have businesses around the corner with the school. You've got teachers that would choose to park there. They already do around some corners. We have business traffic from downtown that comes around. We've got the church has events on weekends, evenings, where people will park there for extended periods of time. Those residents don't have a lot of other options of where to go. Like I said, it's very densely populated. They don't have large driveways or garages. It's an alley back there. They don't have really anywhere else to go.
So they move their cars currently every couple hours, they'll go out and move them?
When the residents get to purchase a $5 permit, which
Okay.
allows them, if you live there and your car is registered to that house, they can purchase a $5 permit,
Okay.
lasts 5 years, and then they are allowed to park there for the 24 hours.
Okay, I
They
wasn't
do
aware of
obviously
that.
have to move, but yes.
Thank you.
I will also state, obviously, my kids do go to a private school. We have some of the same issues, but between parent-teacher organizations, we organize picking up the children that were not in the bus lanes, you know, so that can come down to the school to help organize that. I'm just saying, there's a lot of other options than taking that parking. Those buses can still park there with the parking on the other side as well. So, appreciate the time.
I'm at Scott, 217 North 8th Avenue. Been there for 47 years, been nothing but a problem with the parking there, with the school and the church events. And with that Restat building, when they were in business, that's one of the best things we come up with, a 2-hour parking restriction. I got a permit myself to this day. And with the school events, it's been nothing but a hassle. They park on the west side of the street. All the parents, I think you should educate the parents about parking there with the kids running across the street. I'm there picking up their litter, noise problem, everything else. They got a big 2-city lot, parking lot. They got, well, actually 3 parking lots on 2 blocks that they own. There's a lot of parking on 9th Avenue. They can enter, circle out. We gotta put up with the noise from snow removal, the delivery trucks at 3 in the morning on Wednesday, everything else. It's been nothing. I don't see why they cannot enter their own parking lot on 9th Avenue. That would solve everything. They got more than enough room, more than enough room. Like I said, I've been there for 47 years. It's been nothing but a problem with that parking. The school teachers, the workers, everyone, they park there. Nothing but a problem. I would say either full resident parking there only, or stay with the 2-hour parking. Thank you.
Hi, Gia Wright. I live on that street across from the 4 doors there.
I'm sorry, can you
Gia
just-
Wright?
Yep, and
Okay,
your
I live across the street there.
your address,
at the
please,
4
for the
doors.
record.
Let's see, I have been there probably about 5 years. Just recently, my grandfather and father were needing to move up from Florida, health problems. They had to move in with me. There was nowhere else for them to park. My son was living with me at the time. We have a small garage and 2 concrete, I paid for it, nice really parking spot, but there was no room for a 3rd car or a 4th car for them. My grandfather from Florida was parked there. He would go and do his daily business every day, but he needed to park there. He can't walk. He has since moved out, but he comes to visit me for lunch. I'm home 4 days out of the week. There won't be places for him to park. As somebody was saying, there's a duplex around the corner across from the fire department, a home there with a lot of children, a lot of driving age children, and then there's a business and then a duplex. On the other side, on Elm, I get my hair done across from the post office. That's where she directs her employees to park, is on that street to leave parking for their customers. So now I'm limited on where I can park and where I can have people come and visit me during the day to park. I'm home enough to know I don't see any volunteer crossing guards on either Cedar or Elm ever. The children are children and they do dart across the road. The traffic it moves too fast on that road. It's a 2-lane road. People see that and they barely come to the stop sign after coming down from Elm and stopping on Cedar. There are a few different things that I could see, possibly putting some speed bumps in there, having crossing guards, at least at one of those sections. And then to me, the biggest thing is to use that wonderful parking lot in the back that has the parking lines on there. I see quite a bit of people parked back there, but offloading and unloading the children seems like it would be the ideal situation there. They have a little further up from the triple doors, a door that faces both the parking lot and 8th. Let the children in and out there. It would totally avoid any cross-traffic problems. I don't know what brought this on, but I don't want any children harmed, but I do know I'd like to be able to have the convenience of having a spot in front of my house. I personally will be needing knee replacement soon. I don't like to admit it, but it helps me as I'm taking my groceries in the house. I walk up there, my kitchen's right there, and it saves me a lot of wear and tear. Parking is a premium, but I think there is a solution for the children on the other side of the building. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak to this topic? John, I think the young lady.
I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Cassandra Langenecker. 825 Redwood is my residence, but my husband and I, he spoke already. We own one of the duplexes right in the middle, 224 8th Avenue. We have lived in 4 of the 10 units on that street over the last 20 years, so we're really familiar with the way the parking is. We were living there when we had our 2 boys, and if we didn't get a spot, there wasn't other spots. Like, I used to, we were living there in our duplex, and I was working at Trinity Lutheran at the daycare center. Sometimes it was better for me to not move my car and walk with an infant and a toddler because it was a serious risk of losing the spot and not getting it back. If we had like family parties or anyone coming over, they were parking like in Trinity's lot half the time because there was nowhere to go, because you can't park on 7th Avenue with all of that. It's not like you can go around the block. Like Kevin had said, the garages that are in the alley are not large enough to fit a modern car. So it might look like there are garages. Nobody's really parking in those garages. There's like our unit has a stairs-free flat level unit that is really great for people to that are handicapped or need that. So if they can be at the street and then go in straight in single level, that's fantastic, and that would be an incentive to want to be there. But if you have people that are renting like that and then they have to park blocks away, I don't even know where they would go if we lose this parking. I like what Scott had said about making it possibly residents only on a small area of that strip, just from 20 years of experience with that block particularly. Like, taking that away would be terrible for those residents. A lot of them have kids or need to be not several blocks away from their residence. Also, like my husband had said, our kids go to a private school too. We understand how it works with the pickup. We had major construction completely reroute all of our pickup and drop-off situation, and it moved really smoothly. We had to switch from dropping off for almost a year, one side of the building all the way to the other side of the building. It was at St. John's, and it was fine. I also agree that if we're gonna put busing on a street for the safety of the children, Cedar Street would be a much better, just because there is that visibility, having the street 10 feet wider plus no parking on the opposite side. That would clear it up for if parents like to drive down 8th Avenue to doing pickup. That would just put your buses far away. But yeah, I mean, parents are pretty good about learning new pickup methods. Like, if it's about trying to maintain something the way it is, talking from experience recently at St. John's, we had to completely redo absolutely everything about the way pickup and drop off worked for a year, and it was fine. So that's all I got.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had one comment. When it was brought up, it said that the teachers park on 8th Avenue. The teachers have a parking lot on the west side of the building off of Cedar Street, so all teachers park there. And the staff members for Holy Angels always park on 8th Avenue in front of the church where their church is. That's the only places we park. But if there are any teachers, we certainly would like to know, because the teachers are told that they have a parking lot on Cedar Street. So I just wanted to make sure that they were where teachers do have a parking lot.
John?
John, could you come back to the podium?
So what would be the logistical issues of rerouting the buses to a different location?
Well, if the drop-off for the kids from K-5 through 8th are all dropped off on 9th Avenue. And 9th Avenue is a narrow street. It is total chaos every day, every evening when it dropped off. When they're dropping off during the winter months especially, traffic is blocked or is backed up all the way up to Walnut Street, because they have to drop off and they have to be, it's a one-way street and people can't get by. So the reason the buses drop off on the east side of the school is because it would prevent all of that more buses in an area, and the buses need to come, drop off, and leave. If they would end up being where the rest of the school is dropped off, they would fall behind on their routes and they wouldn't be able to drop off the kids where they go on the west side. And it would be really, it's chaos out there on that side, and I'm sure your officers, I know, have also been watching that area just to make sure everybody's safe and that. So that is the reason why the buses always drop off on the east side of the school, because there aren't that many kids on the buses. There are maybe 3 or 4 kids on each bus, so it's stop, drop off, and the way they go. So Cedar Street would be another issue, or because we don't have people, we could probably have people staffed there to grab the kids, but the normal entrance to the school would be off of 9th Avenue, and the other one is off of 8th Avenue, where we have teachers downstairs in the K3 and K4 classes. So it would be a little bit more of a hardship to move it over there, and it would create more traffic jam.
Thank you.
Any other questions for John or? Yes, sir, come on up.
Kevin Langenecker again. So I appreciate him saying, the amount of children on the bus, and that it would just be a little bit of hardship in staffing to change the children to the pickup bus to Cedar Street, where there is a lot more space on the street and opening. So like I said, hopefully we can see some other variations that are possible as maybe more pickup on the Cedar Street. Because otherwise we're abrupting over 10 families' lives by changing that parking. Thanks.
Any other comment? Public comment?
One quick question. So the way it is right now, it's been that way for quite a long time, I'm assuming?
Yes, that is correct.
Never had to worry about any traffic or safety issues with the kids? I mean, I know it's not ideal, but hopefully no one was hurt ever.
Yes, we've always been doing it that way, but the only reason this came about was the bus depot contacted our school and said that they needed to make sure we reserve a space for their buses so they can come in, drop off, and go. Same thing as when they come in and pick up. And that's what we're doing because requested by the bus depot. Bus go right way.
Right, John, but what has changed that, other than the bus requesting it? Has there been any kind of imminent reason?
That I can't answer that, I have no idea, but previously we've changed over to go right way versus Johnson bus. So it may have been because they've had a changeover and the drivers were complaining because I do drive bus and I do know that they are just crammed they gotta drop off, they gotta pick up, they gotta drop off, they gotta pick up, and time is very crucial for them. So I understand why they're doing that is because as soon as they're done dropping kids out there, they're doing middle school kids then. And then all of a sudden, high school is first, then it's middle school, then it becomes private schools. So they are on a timeline, and that was the reason for the request.
John, before you go away, how long do the buses stay there?
How long do they stay there?
Yeah, when they're dropped, I think you said
You
3.
know, some have 2 or 3 kids, they're probably there for less than a minute, and then they're gone.
Okay,
Pickup, it may be like 5 minutes, because they have to wait until some of them get there a little bit earlier, and they wait until school is left out, and then they leave. But drop-off you're lucky if you have them sitting there for 1 or 2 minutes, because they don't have that many kids on.
okay.
How many buses pull up there to drop off every morning?
Pardon?
How many buses pull up there to drop off every morning?
Just 2.
Oh.
So one may be there first, and then the second one may come later, or they sometimes come together. The only issue with the bus sitting there for more than 5-10 minutes would be if they did a field trip. The field trips, obviously, they get there a little bit earlier, they wait for the kids to load up. Once the kids load up, then they leave.
So
Like I
these,
said, field trips are maybe 1 or 2 a year.
yeah. So we're talking about, with all of this, using your numbers, less than 10 children?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other public comment at all? Well, that puts us in a spot then to determine. John, maybe one more time, I'm sorry.
Get your steps in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we're all just trying to work our way through it. You said that there might, I just want to clarify the comment you made about Cedar Street. Clearly the public thinks that's a viable option, but you've restricted entries and exits at the school, and that Cedar Street is not normally used as an entry.
That's correct.
exit.
Right.
And only 2 staffed are on the
That
east
north
and west
entrance
side.
is normally not any drop-off anywhere. It used to be for K-3 to go because they were downstairs. Now it's not. Now it's basically not used as entrance at all. It's just the west side of the school and the east side of the school.
How much further is it for the kids to walk from Cedar Street to their entrance, their current entrance, than it is on the
Oh, that would be,
avenue?
you're talking about maybe if you drop them off on Cedar, they'd have to go down Cedar and all the way down the 8th, about 500-600 feet. And especially in the wintertime could be some issues, but in summertime, days like today, you know. But the kids with their backpacks and stuff, we'd have to have somebody posted on that corner to make sure that the kids get to their spot in front of the glass walkway, in front of the entrance to the lobby.
Would that be something that the school would be willing to do, is staff somebody on that end?
I can go back to the school and ask them if they would prefer some alternate route, if they would prefer to use Cedar Street. I can do that. And I sure hate, like heck, to have them do 9th Avenue. 9th Avenue, I know, is just totally chaos there because there are so many single vehicles dropping kids off. That would really be, and we can't have them go into the parking lot because once they get in the parking lot, got the kids all running from 9th Avenue all the way to the school and playing in the parking lot before school opens up. So the kids are playing in the parking lot. So,
We're talking about just 2 buses here
yep,
that would drop off wherever you
Yep.
guys decide you wanted to do that. But they could fit in that space there on Cedar?
You could only put one bus on Cedar Street in front of the school, on the north side of the school, because then you got the driveways going into the parking lot where the teachers park. So there is only enough room for one bus to drop off a kid. Now, dropping off a kid probably wouldn't be much of an issue, but when they come to pick up the kids, they're gonna be sitting there and you only got room for one bus to sit on Cedar Street there in front of the school. There would only be one bus be able to do it. There isn't enough room between the two parking, or the two driveways onto the Cedar Street teachers' parking lot. So it would be a little difficult to use Cedar Street for, especially for pickup.
John, the area we're talking about on 8th is now on the west side of the road where the buses are dropping off. That's
Yep.
now posted as no parking.
That's correct. Yep.
And the bus company is asking that we change that from no parking to no parking bus loading
Buses
zone.
only.
Is that because when they were going to drop off, they were finding vehicles there?
That's correct. Yep, that is correct. And the people that were there were basically Holy Angels people. So they were told, but the bus people wanted a sign saying that there would be for buses only. So, you know, I can go back, have them go back to the bus depot and ask them if there's any issues to continue the way we are right now, and come back and let you, or I can let you know, but that's all I, you know.
No, I understand. And then, if that's an enforcement issue, the police department can certainly assist if people are parking there.
It's
It
been,
strikes me that it's not no stopping, standing, it's no parking.
we have a portable sign right now that says, you know, buses, and that has been working, but we were looking for something permanent.
Understand.
And that's why we asked for your help.
Yep, I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Kevin, could I have you come to the podium? Obviously, we're not engineers.
Yes.
Not the consultants, so you clearly can hear from our comments tonight, the concern isn't necessarily the bus stop zone, it's across the street and restricting the parking further.
Certainly.
I'll be fully acknowledge that I was naive to the fact that residents can purchase a permit in that area like they can around the high school. I wasn't aware that that applied, so I apologize for not knowing that. Can you talk us through, we are, as we read in the beginning, that we follow standards. So talk us through implementing a bus loading zone without restricting parking.
Sure.
Can you just kind of walk us through that so the commission understands where we're at?
Certainly. So if we were to design a facility, almost any design guide, including NACTO, which doesn't carry the same weight as MUTCD, but is more geared for urban areas like this, we would not recommend lane widths less than 10 feet typically. And so the assessment and the memo that we issued kind of references that, looks at some probable space that parked vehicles, including the bus, would take up. And that's where that recommendation came from, because from a design standpoint, from the standards, 9 and some odd feet left for two-way traffic in each direction is just not up to speed or, up to standards. However, I mean, from a traffic engineering, municipal engineering standpoint, if that's working, if buses are stopping there and there aren't complaints arising or traffic safety problems from allowing two-way traffic, we're not saying it doesn't work. Obviously, it does just from that standpoint, but we were mostly relying on standards that if we were to design a street clean sheet like this, we would certainly not recommend a loading zone opposite of parking because of the remaining available space.
I know this puts you in a tough spot to ask you this, but
Sure.
would it be irresponsible of the commission to recommend the bus loading zone and not restrict the parking?
No, I think that's reasonable, as long as there haven't been any safety issues. And I will say that our assessment didn't take a super close look at any kind of crashes that have been occurring that might arise from that, but I'm not overly concerned. So no, I don't think that would be irresponsible.
When I have a question about streets and engineering, I go to our expert, Max is here with us tonight. Max, I'm wondering if I could just have you help guide the commission on this issue.
Good evening, thank you. So I've heard everything. Obviously, the request came to have a special loading unloading zone for the buses. Kevin looked at the existing site conditions and saying, if we are to do this, then we recommend doing also this, and that for safety reasons, for following design standards, etc. Now, I understand the conversation here is about, well, what's the impact of adding this loading unloading zone on the residents and the other users of the road in the area, and looking at maybe alternate solutions because of realizing the importance of that parking, not completely removing it. So I know the concern is, what you just asked, if we put the loading zone and just keep the parking, are we creating an unsafe situation? The main issue, as I understand it, is the width of the travel lanes that we're going to, create by doing that. We would be shrunk to 9 feet. I would not recommend that. I would recommend getting to staying with the minimum of 10 feet. However, I know, I've heard through these exchanges, through the conversation, also the timing of all this loading and unloading happening at specific times in the morning. And, you know, I haven't observed the traffic there during loading and unloading, so I don't know how the general behavior of the drivers are. Like, you drive anywhere and somebody's stopping to drop off somebody, or there's construction because somebody's fixing something. Drivers usually stop and know to alternate. You kind of know who has the right of way because your lane is blocked, so you gotta wait. I would think that, you know, this general behavior would apply there during the times of loading and unloading the kids. I guess that could mitigate the concern if we put the loading zone and just leave the parking as it is.
Max, we have a ordinance in West Bend that allows buses to utilize their emergency lights and stop signs. And it's generally not done when loading and unloading at the school. It's usually done at the bus stops itself. But we have an ordinance that allows them to do it if there is any concern. I'm wondering is that an option that we say when they're at Holy Angels to utilize that in addition to, I agree with you, common sense. We're not gonna get two cars trying to jockey past a big yellow school bus.
Yes.
But we could also implement that safety. I'm more concerned that we follow our standards and that we're not creating an undue precedent or unsafe situation. But there is some reasonableness as well as
Sure.
from our public and our responsiveness to the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to add that tool with using their stop sign and their stop lights to make sure that we get that behavior from the general users to stay safe and to not. I know everybody's in a hurry in the morning. Everybody's late. Well, I'm late, but I don't know. I'm just assuming everybody's like me. But like, you're late, but then if somebody's there, you have to stop. That's it. And having that extra tool of using the stop sign and the stop light is a great idea to help with that.
And if you implemented that, people would probably change their driving patterns, right, accordingly?
Yeah, some people might choose other routes. I mean, yeah.
Do we have a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit in that area when children are present? I didn't notice that when I was going through there. Why is that?
It's a good question, I'm not sure.
I mean, wouldn't it be appropriate?
Captain is signaling we do have a 15
Oh, do we?
miles.
Okay. Okay. I didn't notice when I went through there, but, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Captain. All right, thank you, Max.
Thank you.
The concern I'll share with the commission is we implement something that goes against the standards and we have an accident where someone is hurt. I understand the reasonableness of it, but we have our standards for a reason. I think we heard from Kevin and Max both saying that it could be reasonable. We certainly can implement talking with the bus companies to utilize their stop signs and emergency lighting when they're dropping off at Holy Angels, but that's relying on human factor that bus driver does that.
Using those lights, I think, is a really good idea. At that point in time, we're not implementing or changing anything. And the cars that have been parked there, from my understanding from John's own words, were Holy Angels staff or people. So that were parked in the areas where the bus should be. So is that correct?
The spots that are being taken up now that the bus company is concerned about are Holy Angels employees?
There, period.
I thought you had said that there was problems with people parking there and they turned out to be Holy Angels people.
Yes, the Holy Angels people picking up their students at that time.
Okay, parents.
Are supposed to be there, and that they weren't able to stop there. It's no parking, period. But when it's pickup, the public does pick up their kids there at that time, and then they leave. But now, with the buses not being able to get their kids in their locations where they drop them, that's where it becomes an issue. So
would
right
adding
now,
something-
we are monitoring it with a portable sign allowing the bus to do that. And I'm not sure if we're legal to do that, but we at least are able to train our people not to pick up in that bus loading area that has been basically designated for years.
Earlier, you had mentioned about no stopping or drop-off signs or anything like that versus no parking signs. Is that an option for no pickup or drop-off signs to help prevent that, which would allow your officers to enforce that if need be?
Well, we can enforce the no parking. If you institute no stopping, that applies to buses as well.
Oh.
That's why the bus company wants
I was just
bus
kidding.
stop zone. No, it's a good question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When I have a question that Max can't answer, we call on Doug.
Oh, thank you. So I'm gonna just put on my DPW hat for a second, and just something you may wanna consider in the wintertime, the streets get much narrower with the snow. So a 9-foot drive lanes each direction and drive pavement can shrink considerably when you got snow on each side of the road, so that's all I had to comment on, thank you.
I believe we've probably gathered all the information we're going to gather tonight. It's the point where I'll look for a motion.
Motion to retain the same policy and no changes.
Second that.
Yeah, it doesn't appear to be a safety issue, so I would concur to leave it the way it is.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to basically not consider the request to remove, to install no parking bus loading zone signage in front of Holy Angels. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, and I'm opposed. That passes to not move forward 3-1. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I appreciate it. Just wanted to make sure, sir, I missed your name. Was that Jeff? Yeah, great. Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because you had called early, and I had some comments from you here you summed them up, just wanted to make sure all the voices were heard. All right, thank you. Then we'll move back to our normal agenda item, and this, number 2 is to consider a request to reduce the speed limit on South River Road between Paradise Drive and Rusco Drive. Kevin.
So for this item, we conducted a speed study to look at the appropriateness of the request to reduce speeds. This was not really a follow-up, but it seems like this has been studied a little bit before, so we did review some of the other studies that had been done, as well as those recommendations. Some background on how these studies work. We take data collection, not only looking at the existing speeds, but also looking at the context of the roadway. What does it look like? How wide is it? Does it have curb and gutter, like some of these urban roadways, like the roadway we were just discussing? In this case, it's a rural cross-section, which means that it's got no gutters, it's got shoulder. In this case, the context was a roadway with very little curvature, vertical or horizontal, which is important for sight distance, which is something that we did informally evaluate just because sight distance is very good. So this is in line with the Wisconsin DOT's guidelines on setting speeds. The city of West Bend has statutory authority to post at any speed between 15 and 55 miles an hour on their facilities. We still follow the guidelines to look at the appropriateness of any kind of speed change. And so to start off, we collected traffic speed data. Traffic speed data is collected in this case, on every car that travels past a certain point. We use a radar device that actually records the speed using a Doppler radar. The way we classify speed data in order to kind of filter out the outliers is we look at the percentile speed. And so one of the big metrics is the 85th percentile speed, which simply means that it's the speed that 85% of vehicles are traveling at or under. Again, using that sort of metric kind of filters out the outliers. For instance, whether or not there's some error in the data collection devices, and whether or not this is an enforcement issue, but there was someone that we found going 149 along this roadway. Whether or not that was an anomaly, not quite sure, but again, it helps to really get a good feel for what most people are doing. And so to that end, we found that just a little bit north of the study intersection, or it really wasn't the study intersection, but just the intersection where residents were expressing concern, we found the 85th percentile speed was 56 miles an hour northbound and 57 southbound. So again, 15% of vehicles are going faster than that speed, but a very good number of vehicles are traveling at about that speed. Another metric that we look at is the 10-mile-an-hour pace. So if you break up all the speeds into a 10-mile-an-hour band, the band with the most vehicles traveling within it, that's what we would call the 10-mile-an-hour pace. And we found that northbound and southbound they started out at 47 and 49 respectively, so 47 to 56 and 49 to 58. We also took a look, as I went into a little bit about the context of the roadway, the lane widths, just the general location. We looked at the public intersection where sight distance was observed to be very good. That's at Prairie Drive. There was a lack of any kind of visibility restricting vegetation or vertical curves. And then finally, we looked at crashes along the corridor, as well as looking a little bit more close at Prairie Drive. We did not find any crashes that suggested any sight distance issues that would maybe be exacerbated by excessive speeds. It's difficult to say whether any individual crash was impacted, or at least crash patterns are impacted by speed without a more thorough analysis, but there were no hotspots or particular types of crashes that resulted in any kind of concerns. And then we did not see anything that jumped out at us for further study there. So based off of the lack of crash data that caused us concern or the need to look closely or more closely, And because the speeds were mostly in line with this posted speed limit, we did not find any reason to recommend a change to the posted speed.
Thank you.
Any questions for me?
Kevin, can you just educate us on kind of the philosophy of lowering a speed limit when it's not justified by the report?
Absolutely. So speed limits, drivers typically drive the speed that they're comfortable, and that's where we really start focusing on the context. If we change the sign, the chances that drivers change their behavior without a good amount of enforcement is not very good. And then the other issue that you could exacerbate is speed disparities. Crashes are certainly worse the higher speeds are. However, there's also a potential to increase the likelihood of crashes or the severity of crashes if speed differentials are greater. So if you have someone who's strictly following speed limits and someone who's driving based off of how they feel, you could have some disparities in speed that could cause issues between two drivers on the road. You can also cause issues with drivers judging gaps if it's difficult to anticipate when a vehicle is going to be at the intersection that you're sitting at based off of a big disparity in prevailing speeds.
Questions for Kevin?
Thank you.
All right, we'll open it up for public comment. Again, if you have a comment, please come up, state your name clearly so my partner can get it, and your address, please, for the record.
Good evening, my name is Chris Merkel, M-E-R-K-E-L. I live at 1710 Cloverview Street. That puts me in the Prairie Meadow subdivision off of River Road, which is behind PMF Landscape Supply. I've lived in the city of West Bend now for about 10 years, in the same place there. Lived in Washington County for close to 20. And this is the first meeting I've been to because West Bend and Washington County broadly is well-run, well-governed. It supports families, it supports businesses. So this is the first time I've ever complained about anything. So I appreciate you listening. What I see here is an increase in development that continues to increase along this corridor. So I'll talk a little bit about that. The other thing though I want to point out here is that in the description here, we've discussed that the speed limit on River is 55 from Paradise to roundabout to roundabout. It actually is not. It's 45 from the roundabout to the creek. I don't know why that is, but what's interesting about it is there is less cross traffic, less opportunities for cars to come in and out of the roadway, and that is 45. And then if you go south of the roundabout, now obviously the character of the road changes and things like that, we've got 45 south of there. So the overall view on this that I have is that this 1.5-ish mile section of road is just really incongruous with how we're doing roads elsewhere. So I think that's kind of interesting. First of all, if we were to think about this as a long corridor, I have teenage kids, and I kind of understand that kids from Jackson are traveling north in the morning, south in the evening as they're coming to and from West Bend High School. Likewise, kids from West Bend are taking that corridor south and north to go to KML and Living Word. As a parent of teens, I feel that, providing a consistent speed limit from where it transitions from 35 and have it be 45 across that entire section, I think would be beneficial to teenage drivers. In addition to that, we have a significant increase in density along that roadway just in the last 5 years, not to mention the 10 that I've lived in West Bend. We have the development of a new industrial park coming online, so we're gonna see increased truck traffic. Beyond that, there's a lot of different types of zoning. I'm not a zoning expert, but by my count, we have industrial, we have residential, we have agricultural, there's a church subdivision. So there's a lot of mixed use of that area. I appreciate the assessment of the roadway as it relates to access to the Eisenbahn Trail. I can tell you as somebody who's attempted to reach the Eisenbahn Trail via River Road, the functional use of the shoulder, the paved part, isn't much wider than the podium I'm standing at. And so when you're trying to take your bike down that podium and you've got traffic whizzing past you at 55 miles an hour, I think it creates an undue safety risk for cyclists. I love the Eisenbahn Trail, but I would never take my kids out there. I would never bike from my subdivision to the Eisenbahn Trail. It's simply something I deem to be too unsafe. The shoulder, the paved shoulder is far too narrow. It disappears when you have all the turnoffs, and that creates, its own risk. And the gravel shoulder is non-existent in place. It's simply just not safe to bike down there. So, for that reason, I'd like to see that. When I look at other similar roadways between Washington and Ozaukee County, I commute a lot of different ways. I look at other similar roads, and I don't see 55-mile-an-hour limits on roads that have the same type of mixed use and zoning. So I'm not really sure why that is. And quite frankly, as I drive down some of those other 45-mile-an-hour roads, I do see people driving 55. It very well could be the 85th percentile speed on those roadways too. But that alone, I don't think is everything that should be taken into consideration when we think about how we set the speed limit on that road. I'm definitely not a traffic engineer, but this has been something I've been thinking about literally since I moved in. Like the speed of that road was a key factor. And honestly, I bought the house where I bought it going, well, it sucks that road's so fast, but well, West Bend's a great community. I'll live there anyways. So really, I'm just kind of saying, let's kind of recognize that this isn't a rural connector anymore. That it really supports a more urbanizing, if you want to call it that, characteristic. So I was kind of looking at this, and there's a concept of vulnerable use, right? So within traffic safety, vulnerable use is what is the risk posed to pedestrians and cyclists? And there are a lot of other rural roadways across Washington County that, simply aren't practical for a pedestrian or a cyclist to use to get anywhere. This section of road actually is. It's a very short jog. Coming out of either my subdivision or the subdivision that exits onto Rusco, to get over to that Eisenbahn Trail. And I think lowering the speed limit to 45 certainly would help with that. I recognize that, traffic patterns change slowly, but, hopefully that can be, handled through a mixture of, enforcement and, that kind of thing. So that's what I have to say. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if you have any questions for me,
I do. So the 45-mile-an-hour zone, how far would you propose extending that?
I think at a minimum to Rusco.
Okay.
But I would advocate the whole way. Because I think you have to think about this in terms of...
Can you clarify the whole way?
Oh, certainly. So this would be roundabout to roundabout, Paradise to NN. If that's NN, right?
Yep.
Okay. Because if you're traveling south past NN, your speed limit goes down to 45 until you reach the town of Jackson. which is all very residential and continues to be that way until you get well outside of town. Similarly, you're going north, you get to the roundabout at Paradise, that then becomes a 35-mile-an-hour zone as you head up to the high school. So that's why it seems out of character to me. It seems odd to me that we're gonna bookend a corridor of 25 to 35 miles an hour on both ends with something that now, brings the speed up to an additional 20 miles an hour while still having significant amounts of uncontrolled left turns, lot of, two subdivisions, several residences. I mean, goodness gracious, I don't know if I actually lived directly on the road, like that would be even worse, quite honestly. So certainly, every other way, it's got good sight lines and things like that, but man, it is hard to make a left turn during peak hours on and off that road. I'm sorry, that's a really long answer to your question.
That's good, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to this?
My name is Bob McDonald. I live at 1907 Tumbleweed Circle in Prairie Meadow subdivision. And I totally agree with the gentleman that just spoke. I moved there in 2020 from Germantown. And my son lived in the same home I'm living in now. He built there in 2012, and when he moved out in 2020, I bought that home. So I'm very familiar through the years of that. When we first moved in there, I went to our first HOA meeting just after living there a short period of time, and I asked what we're asking today. I said, has anybody ever checked into, and I don't know where all the people are, why they're not here tonight, but I asked at our HOA meeting, I said, has anybody ever checked into dropping River Road down from 55? And everybody thought at the HOA meeting, that's a great idea, that's a great idea. Our HOA board members looked at me and told me that they were gonna take it forward and didn't take it anywhere, because no one knew if it was the county, if it was West Bend, who was responsible for the speed limit there. But I gotta agree with the gentleman, that stretch there, where it goes, it's like he says, it's expanding. You got the industrial park south. You ever see an 18-wheeler pull out on a road and there's 55-mile-an-hour speed limit? That's all new industrial park down there. That's not gonna change. It's only gonna get additional traffic down there. And like he said, the kids that whistle up and down that road there, I looked at it and I thought to myself, just what he brought up, you go from Prairie north, where it goes from 55 to 45, and in that little stretch there, I'll tell you what, the people don't slow down to 45. You know when they slow down? When they hit the turnabout, the roundabout. That's when they slow down. And why the thought was ever put there to make that little section there 45, because there's only one or two houses there. How many people pull out of there, our subdivision, just coming out of there? And I said that right away. As soon as I moved in there, and I was, to and fro all the time, and I thought, wow, this is crazy. I look at it this way, and I've told some of my neighbors, I said, you know what? I wish it was 45 so people would do 55. Yes. Because I'll tell you what, I pull out on the street, if in the rush hour traffic in the morning, going to school, guys going to work, same thing at night, coming home from school, that's when it becomes a real problem there. It's really, you could get by, but when you have all that traffic there at those two set times, and to try to get out into traffic, and when I come out of Prairie Meadows and I'm going north, and I'll tell you what, there's many a times somebody's trying to turn left, so they're sitting there waiting for traffic to break the other way, and somebody's trying to go around. I'll tell you what, we've all seen it. People start creeping out, trying to get around that guy. He's trying to get far enough out so he's got a good view, and you're trying to make a right-hand turn. You're trying to get out in front of him so you can see traffic. We're just waiting for something to happen there, because like I said, I wish it was 45 so people would do 55, because as soon as I moved in there, I got out on River Road, and I'll tell you what, you look in your rearview mirror, they're right on top of you, and you're thinking to yourself, you know what? I looked at the situation when I pulled out, And I thought I definitely had enough room. This guy, there's no way in heck he's doing 55. He's right on your tail, pushing you. So I totally agree, and I don't have kids anymore, but I feel sorry for the families that are in there. And like I said, I think it's, like that other gentleman said, I think it's just gonna get worse because the high schools aren't going away. You've got the industrial park sitting down there. Now you got 18-wheelers, and I understand you were talking Rusco north, but I would like to see it from roundabout to roundabout because one of these days you're gonna end up with a problem down by the industrial park with 18-wheelers pulling in and out of there. And 55, so how is that truck gonna get out? Who's gonna give him room? That truck don't get up to 55-mile-an-hour speed that quick. We're just looking for trouble, so. I go for 45 minimum, and hopefully we end up at 55. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, I'm Nicole Gumness. I live at 2510 South River Road. Sorry, I'm gonna try and make this fast because she's not gonna last much longer. So I live right on River Road, and I realize not many people live right on the road. Our east side pretty much borders our whole entire yard. I'm a homeschooling mom. I homeschool 6 kids there, and we're home a lot more because we are homeschooled. So we use our yard a lot. My kids mostly know not to go by the road. I mean, I have little ones coming, but just the sheer speed that they go is very concerning to me. I realize it's gonna be hard for people to slow down even if the speed is reduced to get used to that, but I would appreciate it just for the safety of my children. We go over to the subdivision sometimes because there's a park back there. It's pretty dangerous, especially at peak hours. I would second the motion. I'd love to see it reduced from roundabout to roundabout, especially with all the new businesses. I feel like there's enough traffic that it doesn't need to be that fast. And also I'd love for my kids to be able to bike to the Eisenbahn, or my high schooler wants to take some classes at the high school, and I just don't feel comfortable having them walk or definitely not ride a bike on the road because they just don't have much control with their cars when they're going that fast. And definitely usually at evening time, people on bikes go so fast, definitely over 100. It's amazing how fast sometimes they go. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say, but thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Linda McDonald. I live at 1907 Tumbleweed Circle. My husband spoke earlier. I just wanted to add a couple things to what he mentioned. When we first built there, we didn't have Milwaukee Tool. We didn't have some of that industrial. When they get out of work and they come flying down, or when there's a high school event going on, a football game, whatever, you can't get out on that road at 55 because they are coming down there 60, 65, and sometimes pushing 70. And I'm intimidated pulling out of our subdivision. We have about 125 people in our subdivision. That is our only entrance and exit. So we have no other way to go. We have to come out on River Road. So as I pull out, I am always terrified that, am I getting up to speed fast enough? I feel like I'm recklessly driving just to get up to speed, make sure the guy behind me, or when I'm turning in, I'm worried that that guy flying behind me is gonna see me put on my signal. And I know there's a turn lane, but we all know people don't pay attention to everything all the time. So I'm just saying, I think it's a real safety concern, and I just think it's not necessary for that little section of road to be 55. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Jared Schellinger. I live on 2990 South River Road, so that takes me right out onto the busiest part of the road at the corner of Rusco. And I'd also like to apologize, I didn't have time to clean up before I came here tonight from work. So we moved in September of 24 into the house. We didn't actually move in, I was doing a lot of work, I didn't actually move in until about December, around Christmas time. And all the back and forth, I'd go every day from work. I'd come in around rush hour, pull in, and I'd get work done. I'd work till about midnight, and then I'd go to my parents' house where I was living previously. And from, I'd say probably 4 o'clock until 7, the road is, it's bustling with people going from Jackson to West Bend and vice versa. And to expect people to go 55 miles an hour on that road, legally is asking a lot. Rusco Road is dropped, and I believe it was 2 or 3 years ago, the police force dropped it from 45 to 35. And then the police presence there helped to keep the road at a stable pace. It took a couple weeks for that to take effect effectively, I'd say. I don't see why dropping the speed limit on River Road wouldn't be the same if the same police presence was active there. There's definitely places the officers could park. And that'd be between, again, both roundabouts, I think. And even in great conditions on that road, you can take into effect, sunset when the deer start crossing all those fields. Even just from that industrial park, there's some forest land behind the Eisenbahn Trail. The amount of deer that I see cross that road when I'm coming home late from work, I believe could be accidents could be avoided there, even in good conditions. In rain and snow, when I'm trying to shovel my driveway, I have a headlamp on. It's got a blinking red light on the back as well, as try to warn people that I'm out on my road, on my driveway trying to shovel, around the mailboxes where I put my trash cans. And the number of times that I have to walk away, of course, I have to be safe and be careful and watch for traffic, but the amount of times that I have to walk away from the road just to allow about 10 minutes, I'm not exaggerating, 10 minutes worth of traffic to come by, and they don't acknowledge that I'm there with, headlamp on. So there's safety concerns there, in my opinion. I don't have kids like some of the people who came up earlier to talk, but if I did have children, I'd be very concerned about that. You have your kid go check the mail, like one of the chores they might do, or take the trash bins out. I wouldn't feel comfortable allowing a child to do that. Even if the child was responsible, I don't see the responsibility in the drivers coming past. I've had, honestly, really the only drivers that do seem to care is the plows who come through. They'll slow down if they can, or they'll try to get out of my way a little bit when they're pushing snow. But everybody else who comes by, they have no disregard. When I do have to pull in my driveway also, from the stop sign on Rusco, I turn left. And then my driveway's an immediate the first left. I don't have very much time to get up to a speed to get in front of anybody, and I don't want to try to, because then I have to immediately hit my brakes, and I don't want to have someone rear-end me unnecessarily. So I wait for a gap. Usually I have to wait till people aren't even coming off the crest of that hill by the Milwaukee company. Then I have time to get out and I can pull into my driveway safely, as long as nobody's coming from the north coming south, sorry. And if I do end up having to wait, then I usually have a line of cars backing up behind me, which also creates an unsafe driving condition. And that's if the first person coming up on me, if they're paying attention, if they're not texting on their phones. And I've had a couple close calls. I've never been hit, since I've moved in, but I have had some close calls, people sliding into the shoulder, passenger side wheels in the gravel. And I care a lot about people's safety. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to see other people get hurt, even if they're the ones making the decision to text and drive. And from my rearview mirror, I can see, I'm watching forward, and I have to watch back too, because if I see someone coming at me from behind, I need to at least know that that's there. And I see a lot of people like this, and then they look up so startled because they don't expect me to be there, because most of the time that's a clear shot through the city. I just like you guys to all take into consideration that the safety of people living on that road. You might not see it. I'm sure you've all lived in the city or around the city for quite a while, but even if you're going on that road, if you're not pulling into a driveway or trying to get to a business, a lot of people said like those semis, you'll get, not that I mind getting stuck behind semis in the industrial park or coming out of Milwaukee company, that doesn't bother me at all, but for their personal safety and the safety of people going to and from, it would really, really save, possibly in the future, could save a life or more. Then not to mention too is, the motorcyclists and people with their sports cars, this is about the time of year where people are starting to get out and they're having fun. And that's one of the fun roads. It's a big straight stretch, and all night we hear people going by it. Sometimes it's the same people, just go back and forth. They hit the roundabouts and go, however fast they can between the two. The motorcycles get up to speed. I'm sure, officer, you have had experience in the past. You know how fast a motorcycle can accelerate. And the same thing with the sports cars. You get Corvettes and Camaros and Mustangs going past. And I have nothing wrong with people having fun, but there's a certain level of safety that also has to be included in that they're responsible for their safety and other people that they could harm on the road. what some people were mentioning too with the Eisenbahn Trail, you can't get to it safely. You can't get to it safely. There's no shoulder for the speed limit there. There's not enough shoulder, and people won't move over, either because there's not enough traffic, they can't get off into the other lane, into the median, or they just choose not to. They don't seem to have much of a regard of our safety. So even like checking my mail every day, it's a, it's a bit of a chore. So I tend to not, usually it's like, you get home, you bring in your trash bins, go check the mail. I wait till it's dark out to do it. And then again, it's like I have to have my headlight on to feel safe doing it anyways. So there's, it's all these extra steps that come into it. And then too, this winter, even just the amount of people going off the road at the intersection of Rusco and River. I came home from work and there was a Fiat in the ditch. It would be the northeast corner of the intersection there. Looked like he was coming from Jackson and turned, trying to get onto Rusco, and just slid right into the, right off the shoulder into the ditch. And there was one other time it would have been the southeast corner, someone coming down Rusco and sliding, and that hill can be slippery. So even coming into that turn from River, if people are going too fast, like 20, 25 mile an hour into that turn, and you'll slide through it, I think helping reduce the speed limit might also help reduce accidents at that intersection. And if someone were to slide through that intersection and get hit from somebody else coming the other way, you're just asking for more problems the faster that other person's going. I just would like to see for everybody's safety that I don't think asking for 45 from 55 isn't going to change someone's trip to work every day or home. I don't think that's going to be a drastic change in the length that we're asking. It's about maybe 1.5, 2 miles of roadway, and like some people have already mentioned, part of it's already 45, closest to the Paradise roundabout. That doesn't seem to help much, so I would like to say that bringing it down to a constant 45, and with police presence after the speed limit change would take place, theoretically, that would also encourage people to drive the speed limit. That's pretty much all I have to say. I appreciate your time and everything you guys do, and I hope that this helps you guys come to some conclusion for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Sternick, 1700 Sagewood Circle, also Alderman for District 4, so I represent many of the people here in this room. Feel much the same way about all the comments made to this point in time. Don't see it being unreasonable to lower the speed limit to 45, and I would advocate for it from Paradise to NN. A couple reasons for that. I don't know if you have a number on when the last study was done, what the traffic rate per day was. I'm assuming it was less than 9,400 vehicles per day. Do you have a number? Okay. Max, a number?
We can find that out
Okay.
on the DOT website.
That's fine. My guess is it was lower than where we're at today as traffic continues to increase along that corridor. River Road is a main north-south corridor in the city of West Bend, also the connector to the village of Jackson and even Grafton for that matter. Growth is something that we have had a hallmark here in West Bend, and the city continues to grow primarily to the south in District 4. As previously mentioned by some of the other people, with Milwaukee Tool coming in that industrial park to the east side of River Road, all the way up to NN. And as Chief, you are aware, there are other developments that are being discussed to be added to that industrial park currently, which will increase both single vehicle traffic of employees as well as semi-traffic along that corridor. We have recently entered or moved to a developer's agreement and a development of a 97 household neighborhood on the corner of NN and Rusco. We can assume that some of those people are going to be going to the high school, and that people will be traveling down Rusco and then onto River Road, increasing traffic on that road as well. We've recently annexed another over 100 acres to be converted into industrial land right off of Rusco Road as well. Presumably, traffic will be exiting onto Rusco and then onto River or out railway out onto River, again, increasing the amount of traffic. You made a valid point that the idea of speed disparity can become an issue. Speed disparity I see as being a major issue when we are introducing more and more semis and larger vehicles along that corridor. Starting to establish those behaviors of lower speeds along that corridor now as we continue to grow would be the right thing to do. I understand that based on the standards in the traffic study that has been completed, we might not meet those thresholds currently. I would be willing to bet that we will within the next 3 to 5 years. And again, here's an opportunity for us to begin to establish those driving behaviors for people who use that roadway often by lowering that speed limit to 45 from the roundabout to the roundabout, which again, I do not see as being unreasonable. I did find it interesting in your report that while there are no hot spots or areas of, what was the word that was used, hot spots or, patterns of crashes. There were 3 of them in the last 5 years in front of our neighborhood. That's concerning to 125 homeowners who drive in and out of that subdivision multiple times every day and drive along that roadway every day. Reducing that speed, I think, in my opinion, be the right thing to do for the citizens of West Bend, particularly those in Prairie Meadow and those in District 4. So thank you very much for your consideration. And I do need to let you know that I need to leave for another meeting now, so I want to get my words in. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Alderman Stark.
Hi, it's me again. I'm just here to answer the question. So about the traffic counts, Kevin looked up on his computer real quick, and in the last traffic count that we have from we start on this is 7,700 vehicles daily, the average daily traffic. In 2019 is 7,200, and in 2013 was 7,100. And then Scott here from the county. So the county had jurisdiction of this road until 2015, and then the jurisdiction was transferred to the city after that. So the study that was done in 2008 was done by the county, and at that point they had counted close to 6,900 vehicles. So those numbers are fairly close. There has been an increase over the years, but from 2008 to 2023, it went up like 900 vehicles per day on that road. The other thing that was mentioned to me is that section that's 45 miles per hour. The speed limit was reduced on that section when it was under the county's jurisdiction, right? So because of the number of crashes, and so reducing the speed limit from 55 to 45 helped with, reducing the number of crashes, and actually, according to this report, no crashes there because they were all by the Prairie Drive and not in that area. So that's the explanation why somebody was asking, or several people were asking, why the difference. That's why. So, yeah, and that's what I have.
Thank you, Max.
My name's Mary Rober. I live at 2530 Tumbleweed Circle, so I'm in Prairie Meadow subdivision. And I concur with everybody. I've lived there since 2010. It's always been an issue as far as, yes, the connection between our subdivision and town. There's no way I could let my kids bike outside our subdivision because of Highway G. And I am one of the people who got rear-ended. I think there's a mindset after you get I drop off my kids, or I have been dropping off my kids every day at school, at the high school. And there's a mindset once you get through that roundabout on Paradise, you're in the country, you're rural, you're gonna go 55, people pass me right when you get through that roundabout on their way to work, because they can't be patient enough even to wait to that passing lane to the subdivision. They're in a hurry. The person who hit me, he was a high school student driving home to Jackson. He was distracted, didn't look up. I always turn on my signal really early there so people know I'm gonna turn. And he didn't see it. And it was a glancing blow. I was lucky that it wasn't worse than it was. So I don't feel like waiting for something to happen there.
Thank you.
I'm Susan Troy, 1711 Prairie Drive, also Prairie Meadow subdivision. And I just wanted to say, common sense wise, you gave some explanations as to why the speed limit was 45 just south of the roundabout and then went up to 55, 55 north of PMF landscape. But common sense says to me, why do we have to argue that our speed limit be reduced to 45 for the whole stretch when we have 130 some houses in that subdivision? And as was said before, that's the only way out of our subdivision. We have no other way to go out, in or out. And so I don't understand why it would be 45 for this short stretch when there's probably maybe 7 or 8 houses there. And then we have a subdivision with 130 some houses trying to get in and out there, and the speed limit has gone up to 55 at that point. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, Scott Schmidt, 900 Lang Street, West Bend, Washington County's Highway Commissioner. I just wanted to clarify a thing that Max said. When we had 45 miles an hour going into the roundabout, one of the reasons we did that is the faster the speed going into a roundabout, the greater the curve coming into the roundabout. And so to save right away and land and people, we typically like to slow them down before they get to the roundabout. That way that curve coming in, and then the curve coming in has to be a little sweeper. And so we asked for lower speed limits. So that was lowered to get a little lower curves because the farm fields that are right there, wetland impact, stuff like that. So that was done for that particular purpose. And another gentleman asked, so we did actually look at this back in 2008, as Max mentioned. So maybe the landowner, this homeowner association, maybe did contact the highway back then. The numbers are incredibly the same for the pace distance and 85 percentile, as they were almost eerily similar within about a half mile an hour of what it was back then. So I just want to point that out, that the highway department did look at that several years back, did that. Completely different thing. Highway department has no jurisdiction here, none whatsoever. Just want to point to that clearly. But one thing that was just brought up by the second to last lady is that law of unintended consequences. If people feel safe going 55 miles an hour and you have quite a few passing zones out there, a couple of accidents you had there, rear ends, okay, but no fatalities. Someone's passing each other now because they're late to school, late to work, causing a head-on crash. Just something to keep in mind, all right, that they might be law of unintended consequences of you go for 55, people feel safe going 55, now you're going on 45. And if they're feeling a hurry and rushed, would they take that chance down more often? Maybe, maybe not. Just want to make sure I wouldn't feel comfortable if I didn't say that after hearing that comment about people passing zones. That's one of our big concerns out there in our more rural county highways. But thank you for your time.
Scott. Any other comments?
Bob McDonald, 1907 Tumbleweed Circle, West Bend. That 45 mile an hour stretch that we're talking about, I can tell you for as long as I've been living there, if I go out of my subdivision and I turn right, majority of people, they think it's 55 all the way to the roundabout. They'll push you all the way down there. And after hearing why it was lowered, I'm thinking we should probably make it 45 from NN, and where it's 35 now, drop that down, 45 now, drop that down to 35. If you really want to slow the people down, then slow them down. But really, when people, they look at that 45-mile-an-hour stretch right there, I'll tell you what, if you live there and you pull out of that regular, they're pushing you all the way. Either way, if you're going down to Paradise, that 45, they're right in your rearview mirror because they're 55. And really, the gentleman mentioned, when you go through that roundabout, you're headed for a school. It goes down to 35, just like that. So I don't understand, maybe it'd be better to do 45, where it's 55 now, and where it's 45, drop that to 35, so you kind of transition them right down that road, and you know what's coming up ahead. And then you don't have to worry about, the transition, because I'll tell you what, I live there, whatever your studies say, I'll tell you what, I look in my rearview mirror, and I know when I see a guy right on my tail, and I look at my speedometer, I know what he's doing. And he's pushing it. They don't pay attention to the 45. Some do, but the majority of people, they think that whole stretch right there is 55. And like you said, we have 125, 130 homes coming out of Prairie Meadow. And the one section where there's a couple homes, 4 or 5 homes, that's at 45. And where you got 125, 30 coming out, you're at 55. And they really don't pay attention to that 45. Not from what I've seen. They're 55 right up to the roundabout. So just another, I guess, thought, push it down to 45 and drop it to 35 and slow them down. That way when they come out of that roundabout, they're doing 35. They're supposed to be doing 35 right there. Headed for the school zone. So anyhow, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Please.
Hello, my name is Paul Carnup. I live on 1712 Prairie Drive in the subdivision. I moved there in 2019 from Mequon. Also, I'm an engineer. I have an engineering firm that I moved from Mequon in 2021. I'm at Rusco and Progress Drive for my company. So my commute every morning is about 1.5 miles. And I take River Road, obviously, to Rusco every day, and I concur with everyone. This really needs to slow down. Usually every morning I'm sitting at the intersection, and as far as there was a comment made, there's no obstructions. I would say starting now in the spring, we're gonna get cattails growing down the side because there's water, a lot of water in that ditch, and I don't know who is responsible to cut that down. They never really get on it right away, so there's always obstructions there, and especially in the winter, there's a lot of obstruction from the snow plowing and things like that. So there's a few times in the year you cannot see down that road clearly, but even when you do see it, you have to give yourself so much room to turn with the next car. And the other problem is when you're heading south to Rusco, it's uphill, and when it's cold out and you're trying to get up to speed and someone's barreling down at you at 55 miles an hour, you usually don't, it's very hard to hit 55 to not impede traffic. I would say at least once to twice a month I get beeped at for taking a right turn on the Rusco because somebody got upset that I took a right turn and slowed them down. I get that one. The other dangerous thing that I've had happen a few times is if I take a right turn on Rusco and I sneak too far to the right to take a right turn, someone decides that they want to shoot right by me down the middle of the road while someone's coming oncoming. I've had that happen where someone just came in super close to me, shot right around me before someone came down the road. So I make it my point to take wide right turns so no one can do that because I don't want to get into an accident. Every morning there's a poor gentleman who drives a school bus there, and I feel for him because he definitely, for what room I need, he needs twice as much to take that left turn going down to the elementary school that way. So from that standpoint, it's just you're waiting every morning because of the fast traffic. Then at night, if you're taking that left turn, you have people barreling down from the top of that hill. They have they're speeding, they're definitely speeding past 55. And then if you're not stepping on it as hard as you can, you're gonna get someone in your trunk very quickly. So it is quite an ordeal some mornings to get on that road, and just slowing it down would just kind of help calm things down a little bit on there. So if you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on this topic?
Gary Troy, 1711 Prairie Drive. I was surprised my wife got up and spoke. She's usually telling me to get up. I've been in Prairie Meadow. We've been in Prairie Meadows for 18 years now. We've seen it go from half full to 131, 133 houses. And I'm retired for 5 years, and I'm so glad because I don't have to go out on that road. I consider it fortunate when I can make a right turn and stomp on the accelerator to get up to 45. By the time I get to the sign that says 45, but the eyesight or whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, if cars are barreling down on you from behind, I'm fortunate to get up to 45, and they're, like you said, they're right on your bumper. And when I was working 5 years ago, I was fortunate to leave the house at about 5 in the morning because my wife still works, and I don't know how she can make a left turn onto that road at 8:30, I think is when she leaves. Yeah, it's, I mean, you can see the cars coming, but there's so many cars that you need to, I've been driving for 60 years, and I mean, you need to know how much those cars are gaining on you before you pull out. Your eyesight may be fine, but you also have to gauge how fast they're coming. And I don't envy anybody going out of that subdivision at school time or the buses, the left turn lane. There's just so much. Most of the time we come from the south, and I got my signal light on to turn right into the subdivision. And you got people that are mad because they have to slow down for you to get onto that pullover lane, and they're flooring it as they go by. They're mad at you because the way they take off around you. So I just, and the Eisenbaum Trail, there was no way I'd take a bike along River Road to get to that. I wish there was some cross, I don't know if there was an easement with the church or somebody over there that would give us an easement to cross to the trail. But I'm not riding any bikes at my age anyhow, so. But yeah, at least to Rusco, it needs to slow down to 45 at that point because you got people that are not gonna wanna slow down until they have to slow down. And so, yeah. I'm glad that I'm not working. So, thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this topic? I have I'd like to read two callers who called our office to provide information who weren't able to attend the meeting tonight. First is from Nancy and Mark Reisner at 1709 Tumblewood Circle. They feel a reduction in speed would be helpful in order to turn onto Highway G from their subdivision. They're concerned about the many school buses that enter into the subdivision. Mark also feels there shouldn't be any passing lanes on either side of Highway G outside of the subdivision. I have a lengthy letter from Joseph and Tammy Emery, 2625 Tumbleweed Circle. I'll summarize as much of the points are what you folks have made here tonight. They're concerned about the 130 homes in the Prairie Meadow subdivision, drivers exiting the subdivision, Additionally, PMF landscaping, dump trucks and larger trucks moving find it difficult to get up to speed. They are concerned as well about the bypass lanes on the cars on Highway G. The cars are at 0 miles an hour waiting to turn in, other cars going 60 miles an hour. They believe that reducing the speed would help create a safer environment. They also note that the subdivision itself is, in their words, landlocked with only the one exit onto Highway G with no direct access to the Eisenbahn Trail. Said a few kids will use their bikes to get up to area businesses, but they believe a reduction of the speed to 40 miles an hour would allow bike traffic from Prairie Meadows to access the Eisenbahn to the north or south. They also pointed out there's no bike trail along Highway G, and some tips on how, if we did implement, how we could take enforcement action. Any other public comment? All right, commissioners?
Well, based on everything I heard tonight, I know we're recommending not to do anything. I would recommend to reduce the speed limit to 45. I drive that road a lot too, and the alderman made the point that I really thought was pertinent with all the increased development going on. I think it's just gonna get worse.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
I concur.
The public comments were overwhelming in regards to this, so.
I drive that road every day, so I see what you guys go through, yeah.
So we'll entertain a motion.
And the other thing is, there's a law enforcement component to this as well, right? So if it goes down, we're gonna have to keep an eye on that section if we're gonna
Our
reduce.
officers will enforce the speed limit, whatever the speed limit. I heard your comments today. I'm sure the captain was already making notes for some special traffic details.
I'll make a motion to reduce that speed limit from Rusco Road north.
I will second it.
All right, so we have a motion to reduce the speed limit from, I believe it's a half mile north of Prairie, where the current 45 mile an hour is, to Rusco Road, reducing that stretch to 45 miles an hour. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That passes 4-0. Thank you. Well, you should actually give yourselves a round of applause for actually participating in democracy. It's a good lesson, civic duty lesson for all of us to realize you do have a voice. No matter what narrative is out there, you do have a voice and your government's responsive to you. So thank you. Feel free to stay later. We've got some other topics, but if you need to leave, we would totally understand. Our next action item is a consideration to remove the northern 2 parking stalls on North Main Street near the district's parking lot off of North Main Street. Kevin?
So KL Engineering investigated the engineering ramifications of this request for removal of 2 parking spaces just south of that driveway for the townhomes at the district driveway. So that is on North Main Street, and similar to the previous item, we conducted some data collection to see what the speeds were at that location. We reviewed statutory requirements for parking restrictions. We also reviewed the site distance that was available at the driveway. So this is a driveway, and it does have different requirements from a design standard and from a traffic safety standpoint than a public roadway intersection would have. So a public intersection should meet the intersection site distance requirements that are provided in AASHTO, which is what we will do for the next item for the 4-way stop consideration. This was done as sort of a check. The statutory requirements are simply a 4-foot no parking zone adjacent to a driveway. And that's, of course, intended to allow drivers some distance to be able to see vehicles coming. In this case, the concern that we focused on was the ability for drivers leaving the driveway to turn right or turn left, I suppose, but the sight distance requirement is actually greater to turn right because you need to not only turn safely, but also get up to speed. And seeing drivers that are northbound on Main Street is the primary challenge at that intersection. As of right now, there is some additional buffer between the driveway over the statutorily required no parking area. It does not provide adequate sight distance based off of AASHTO guidelines. It does allow drivers to see about 100 feet to the south to see northbound approaching traffic on Main Street, 105 feet I think it was, after they pull forward past the legal stopping point or the assumed stopping point. So they need to pull into the sidewalk to be able to crane their head left and see approaching traffic. The speeds that we found along that section of Main Street was about right around 35 miles an hour. So basically the posted speed limit. So nothing too surprising, but that is relatively fast for a dense urban area where you see driveways like this. And so the last thing that we looked at was the crash history. There wasn't a whole lot of value in the crash history because that building's only been occupied for a short period of time. Didn't really tell us much, so it showed that there weren't any crashes related to the driveway. Again, that doesn't really mean anything. So if there were to be additional concerns, if no action were to be taken, it might be worth looking at that again after there's time for any kind of crash patterns to arise. However, based off of our evaluation, data we collected and engineering judgment, we do agree and recommend removal of the 2 parking spaces. That would allow, it's difficult to tell in the field when all the parking was occupied, which it was when we were there. We think in the ballpark of 150 feet or so of additional sight distance would be gained for drivers that do pull forward. And we think that would make a significant increase to the ability for drivers to see conflicting traffic.
Great, thank you, Kevin. I'll note as well that this was a request from the district to have us review this item. So, any comments? Public comment at all? Great, hearing none then, commission?
I would make a motion to pass this, reducing the spots. Second that.
All right, a motion from Tom, seconded by Bill, to remove the northern 2 parking stalls on North Main Street near the district's parking lot off of North Main Street. I'll say we'll work with, once council approves as well, we'll work with DPW Director Newman and his sign people to make sure that it's signed appropriate and consistent with Kevin's recommendation. Great, thank you. Move on then to agenda.
Did we take a vote?
Oh, you're right, we should take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 4-0. Thank you. Next agenda item, consider the installation of a 4-way stop at Forest Avenue and Water Street due to sightline restrictions. Kevin.
Kale Engineering took a look at this item as well. This one had some sight distance concerns, and so we did the formal sight distance evaluation. This is a public intersection, so of course we wanted to evaluate the AASHTO sight distance requirements. We also collected traffic volume information in case that all-way stop would be evaluated in order to mitigate any kind of deficient sight distance. So that would be one of the ways to address it. In our field investigation, we did find that drivers northbound looking left towards that hotel, their vision is obstructed by some vegetation. There's some landscape elements, there's some building features that did restrict the sight distance from the required by about 90 feet. In addition to that sight distance evaluation, we also took a look at crashes that were happening at the intersection, and we did not find any kind of crash history that pointed to that deficiency causing any safety problems. And so based off of that evaluation and based off of the fact that we did not find any crashes that we thought would be mitigated by installing all-way stop, we did not recommend taking any action. As follow-up recommendations, if there were to be a crash pattern that developed, We would recommend first trying to remove any kind of vegetation that was restricting sight distance, and then the next step would be to install always stop.
Thank you. Any questions for Kevin?
Do you know, or do we know, with northbound Forest looking right, how far that development is gonna infringe on where the fence is now? Is there gonna be buildings up there that'll future block that sightline?
I don't believe so, because they had already gotten enough of the building built when we were out there that it looked like it was offset from that fence, I don't know, 10, 15 feet. But we did take some pictures, and I do not believe that that new development would restrict sight distance looking to the right.
Okay. Thank you.
My concern is for all the new development that's in that area, and I'm assuming that our traffic's going to increase up and down that corridor, back and forth.
From a traffic operations standpoint, the traffic that we collected, the traffic volumes would show that an always stop would operate just fine if that was what was decided by the commission.
I would make a motion that we put a four-way there.
I agree.
Motion by Bill, second by Mike. Any public comment?
Good evening. I've been living at 102 East Avenue for most of my life. Been gone maybe a decade and a half, but my parents had lived there as well. The neighborhood is expanding quite a bit with the Emery, and as well as the townhouses that will be soon built on the northeast corner there. We're looking at like 128 different residences, I believe. So right now I'm one of two houses, three if you really count the one that's offset behind the townhouses. But I do have a few comments that I just wanted to mention. First and foremost, I would fully support the installation of the four-way stop and or any additional measures that would improve safety and reduce speeding in the neighborhood. In addition, I'd like to offer the following suggestions for further consideration. Install a stoplight or roundabout at the intersection of Indiana Avenue and Water Street to better manage traffic flow and reduce speeding. I see that as a very big speedway for people. I can hear the cars roaring past my house all the time. Another option could be to add speed bumps along Water Street, similar to those found in the northern suburbs of Milwaukee. That would be a great way to also reduce speeding. Another item to continue to look at is address the impact of the Highway 33 traffic light timing. It seems like everybody is cut down historically down Water Street because of that. Just another issue. And then last but not least, there would be a potential bottleneck at the alleyways adjacent and parallel to East Avenue, especially to garbage trucks and new residents of that northeast corner of Water and Forest, these 8 townhouses that have not been built yet. Also, I would appreciate understanding how the commission evaluated different options, such as a roundabout versus a four-way stop at that intersection. And if the developer would be required to contribute to neighborhood safety improvements. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this topic? Any other comment at all? We had no comments from the public to the office on this topic. All right, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
And those opposed? Aye. That measure passes 3-1. Thank you. All right, moving on then, we'll move to update 6 regarding, agenda item 6, an update regarding Washington County's designation of a significantly unsafe intersection of South River Road and Decorah. Recommended to address if confirmed.
So this item was a follow-up to one that we presented on previously. The recommendation from that was to install no turn-on red signs for, at a minimum when school was coming in and out, so that children using the crosswalk would be better protected from vehicles making a right turn on red. So the follow-up that we completed was to see how that would impact traffic operations, as it would impact capacity, of course, because no turn on red, or I'm sorry, turns on red are part of the methodology for analyzing traffic signals. So some capacity is assumed for vehicles turning right when they actually have a red. So what we did is we applied the highway capacity manual to the traffic volumes, the traffic signal timings, and we looked at how things operate now versus, or at least taking into consideration field observations. And then we looked at how traffic would operate with the right turn on red restrictions. And what we found was a negligible impact the right turn on red restrictions would have on traffic operations. So we looked at all four approaches. The concern, I believe, was for eastbound right turn traffic. And so that was the biggest area of concern. But because of the minimal impacts, we analyzed putting no right turn on every approach. And again, we found it would have no impact.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Kevin on that? Max, can you educate the commission on if we would move forward, how that would take place?
Yes, thank you. So basically, we had asked Kevin to look into adding those no turn on red signs. Now that he's confirmed that this is not going to negatively impact the vehicular operation of the intersection, we're planning on installing those signs. And because the point of having the signs was to call the attention of motorists on the pedestrians moving through the intersection, which with the school nearby, we know is probably a higher number than other intersections. So that would be, now that we have this confirmation, our next step would be to install those signs. I'm not sure if those need to go in the traffic manual or if we just go and install them on the signals. I can work that out with Doug.
Yeah, I believe we have to put them in the manual. Captain, can you check if Road and Decorah is in the manual? Fairly confident it is.
Okay, so we'll wait until after the council meeting confirming that. Okay.
That's not in the manual? No turn on red?
Yeah, we know there's one in for Decorah.
I'll reiterate my concerns from the last meeting that the pedestrian use of that intersection is, even though, yes, it's increased because of high school, it's fairly limited. Most high school students are either driving themselves or being dropped off. The foot traffic from the area, I live in that area, it's minimal. My concern is the flow of traffic, because it gets very congested with all the kids coming to school and leaving school. My concern is that we're going to negatively impact. I appreciate that Kevin studied that. I trust that he took into consideration the times of school drop-off and pickup. At this point, we made a commitment to try to improve at least the perception of that intersection as a dangerous intersection that the county designated as. I think this, if the study says it's not going to impact traffic flow, it would be a reasonable addition. I still worry, though, that we're going to negatively affect the traffic flow and the queues for traffic at those peak times, 7 o'clock a.m., 6:45 to 7:15, and then let out at the 2:15.
Well, my question then is, if we go this route and it has the impact that you're fearing, we're not set in stone, right? We can always change that if it has a severely negative impact on flow of traffic.
We could make a motion to remove them.
Yes, I think anything that is decided or recommended by the commission and decided by council, if we find that it is a problem, obviously, we can come back, state that, and this commission can recommend removing those signs, council can approve it, and then we can take them down.
Have we had an issue or lately? I mean, why are we putting them out? Was there something that caused it?
If you remember, Washington County did a study at the request of residents in the subdivision. Quite honestly, it's a busing issue. If it's designated as a dangerous intersection, then it invokes some policies with paying for busing for the students. So the county did their study and designated it. It's a sheriff's department, I should say, which is statutorily who has the authority to do it. We had some concerns that when they made the designation, we, the city, had some concerns that when they made the designation, there were no recommendations on what we could do to improve the safety. So we had a designation that it was a significantly dangerous intersection without any recommendations on how we improve it. So we looked into it from the commission standpoint and committed that if there was a way to improve that safety, that we would do it. This seems to be a reasonable alternative.
There's that, and when we redo the pavement markings at that intersection, we will use the enhanced crosswalk markings, so the ladder type marking instead of just the two parallel lines. We're trying to call the attention of drivers to the presence of pedestrians, so there will be the signs and the crosswalk painting.
Do we have this by Badger on Main and Decorah? That is, right? Yeah, so it'd be
Those are
similar
the
to
signs
that.
that
Okay, I got you. Okay.
Captain, in the manual, what does it designate? Is it just during school hours or when signs lit, or?
There's two intersections, Decorah and Main, weekdays from the fourth week of August to the second week of June, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., and then again at 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. The intersection of Silverbrook Drive and West Washington Street, just when children are present.
Okay, so we would most likely model it after the Main and Decorah use those times, so that for the rest of the time, the queue would be allowed to proceed, so we'd somewhat alleviate some of my concerns.
I was gonna just add, that alleviates some of your concerns if we did it that way, emulated that.
Yes, except the heaviest queues are, of course, during those times, but yes, it would. I think DPW Director Newman has.
Thank you. Hearing your concerns, I was prepared tonight with a couple options. One, you just covered with setting a time, as, you know, we can post it with signs. I'm certainly not in favor of the electronic signs, but we can post it with the time limits, or there are other options. I don't know if you can see this or not, but turning vehicles yield to pedestrians is another signing option we have if you're not in favor of right turn on red, or no right turn on red too. So I just want to mention a couple of them before you guys make your decision.
So Doug, what are your concerns about the electronic signs?
I feel exactly like the chief does. I think it's gonna impede traffic having a right turn, no turn on red there. During those school hours especially. That's backed up a long ways, going southbound there. So, in every direction, I should say, in the morning. So those are my concerns as well, as having that there, but there are a couple other options if you so well please.
So the thought, you were talking about having a sign up with the times on there as well, correct?
Yeah, not a digital sign, a metal sign.
Okay, the digital, I'm just curious, the digital sign, I've taken that trip on Decorah where I'm stuck not being able to turn right on North Main during that time, and it lights up and it catches attention. But it's only lit up during those time frames, correct?
$25,000.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I understand a little bit more.
Okay.
Megan, if you could help us procedurally, our agenda item, are we allowed to make a motion for action tonight? Thank you. So we have three options in my mind. We can choose to take no action. We can choose to restrict right turns on red during the school peak hours, let off and drop off. I suppose we could, four options then. We could choose to restrict all the time, or then the fourth would be the signage that Director Newman presented, a yield to pedestrian sign, basically a warning sign, which already comes into play of yielding to pedestrians by state statute in the crosswalks. And then, as Max said, we'll be implementing more visible crosswalks.
Yeah, so I just saw the sign that Doug presented there. And so that would be a sign that would be permanent. And then I think it's a good idea to have it permanently, not just during the school hours. And I would think that would be a good option too, like he said.
Option.
So nothing, full-time right restriction on red during the school peak hours of like Main and Decorah, mirroring Main and Decorah, and fourth, and the sign of just a more visible warning reminder to drivers that they need to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk.
I would make a motion to do what Doug had suggested with permanent metal sign. It seems like that would accomplish what we need to.
The yield to pedestrian in the
Yield to
crosswalk?
pedestrians.
I would agree.
I would second that.
All right, so we have a motion. I don't even think we need that in the manual then. That's already state statute. We're not putting anything else. That's just an issue that we can address through our collaboration with Doug and his sign people. Correct? Yeah. We can take a motion to install them if, and that's a good recommendation that we can take to council on how we resolve the item, which is fine. So we had a motion from Tom, second from Bill. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? And that passes 4-0 to recommend to council. Our resolution is increased sidewalk or crosswalk markings and signage that Director Newman presented to us, reminding motorists that they are statutorily bound to yield to pedestrians in the sidewalk. Thank you, everyone. That's a good compromise. And finally, our last agenda item is to consider a request to keep the mid-block crossing between the Washington County buildings located at 432 East Washington Street and 333 East Washington Street.
I was just surprised to see one there.
Yep.
I'll start briefly.
Thank you.
I know that I wasn't supposed to talk, but I'm just going to introduce it.
Thank you.
So Washington County had installed a crosswalk across Washington Street for convenience of their campus being split in two with Washington Street. And so having employees or the general public travel between the two buildings. Right now, the Department of Transportation, the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, is in the process of upgrading curb ramps and crosswalks, especially in West Bend, along connecting highways. Washington Street is a connecting highway. So they came through the inventory, they did find these curb ramps and the crosswalk. So with their program, they want to perpetuate the crosswalk. And so my question to them was, okay, well, is it too standard right now? Because I'm not a specialist, but I was like, somebody needs to look at, do we have the proper signs? Do we have the proper marking? Do we have advance warning signs, et cetera, et cetera? So that's what they were working on, and Scott is here to talk about it, and also Martin from WISDOT, they can speak more to it. I was told that the volume of pedestrian traffic may have been reduced in the past few years due to the county selling some of the building or whatever, but there's still some traffic coming through. And then the county indicated that down the road, it might be several years down the road, they might consolidate their campus on one side, the north side of the road. So eventually that crossing may go away, but they still need it right now. So that's the introduction to the story. I don't know if Scott or Martin wants to speak further about that. The DOT is finalizing their plans, including perpetuating that crosswalk.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you.
I'm Mark.
Thank you, Max.
Project manager from Wisconsin Department of Transportation for the standalone curb ramp project, and it's on City of West Bend connecting highway, state highway, and the City of West Bend. And the purpose of the project is just to upgrade the curb ramps to meet minimum ADA standards, bring them into compliance, bring the detectable warning fields, and make sure the grades are proper for wheelchair users or whatever. And so going through this project, Max brought to my attention that this mid-block crossing is probably needs to be added to the traffic manual. And so we looked at this and we're proposing adding detectable warning fields and adjusting some grades and kind of perpetuating the existing crossing until such time as the county redevelops their campus, and at that point, whatever decision with driveways and crosswalks would be made at that time. I also talked to our safety engineer in the southeast region, and he looked at crashes for the last 10 years at the mid-block and did not find any pedestrian vehicle crashes. And then I also looked at, well, what if pedestrians needed to detour to the nearest street, which is Indiana Avenue, and the safety engineer did find, I think, two or three crashes at the crosswalk of Indiana with vehicles. And plus, it's about 800 feet from the mid-block to Indiana, so it's a third of a mile detour. And while I like to take a nice walk during lunchtime, I think a lot of people on courthouse business may be in more of a hurry. And so my recommendation to the commission would be to allow this crossing to continue, have us upgrade it, and also the standalone curb ramp project. It's all, even though it's a local funded, local jurisdiction connecting highway, the state and federal would be 100% funding the construction of it. However, maintenance of signs, maintenance of pavement marking at the crosswalk, which we would also perpetuate, would be the responsibility of a local jurisdiction, be it the city or county, depending on what's decided. So I think that's why I also brought a couple of displays that I could leave with the city and with the county. It just shows the stationing and the location of the mid-block and its location relative to Indiana Avenue. So thank you.
Great. Thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate your patience.
Thank you for having us. It was a good discussion with some of the earlier ones.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just Scott, just to shed a little bit of the dynamic that the city has historically been against and will continue to be against mid-block crosswalks due to the uncommonness of them. The drivers aren't looking for crosswalks where there's not intersections. However, realistically, this crosswalk has been in existence for quite some time, just not acknowledged by the city officially in our traffic manual. The reason it's in front of us, as Martin said, is there's a federal project coming through, DOT project coming through that will upgrade it. And then as Max, I think Martin both mentioned, and I'm probably stealing all of Scott's thunder now, so I'll stop talking, but that this may be a temporary, somewhat temporary in nature as the county readjusts their campus. Sorry, Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, Scott Schmidt, 900 Lang Street, and thank you, and thank you for spending the time here tonight and discussing this. And you are correct, I was sitting back there looking at the aerial photos going, the courthouse was built in 67, 68, and 1970 aerial photo showed the crosswalk going across there. So it has been there for quite some time, and I appreciate the DOT actually taking the time to look at the safety in that intersection. And as was pointed out by Max and Chief Daring, that the county is working on a current master plan. We're in the middle of the phase doing some remodeling in the building to move our natural resources and community development across the street within the next about year and a half or so, so they'll be moving across the street. So our PAC will have some vacancies in it. We're looking at, again, bringing the rest of that building across the street at some point. It won't be within the next year or two because buildings take time to construct and purpose, stuff like that. But it is something that we've been actively working on, and we'll work with the city of West Bend on that, as well as there's some other development areas, as you know, Fair Park School is going to be closing its doors in 2027, and what does that kind of whole area look like? So looking at more holistically with the city about what that whole area could look like. And as mentioned earlier, the Samaritan home, which is quite a few of our workers were there. You can imagine that going over across the street for finance purposes, HR, stuff like that. As you remember, as you probably know, back in the day, it was a lot of paperwork, right? Mail was delivered at the courthouse and taken across the street, and all the paperwork, time cards, that's all going away with electronics. And it's very little used, but we still do use it, and it is safe. We feel it's safe. Again, the DOT did their traffic study. If you do the left, right, left, and look, and we're crossing it not during the busy time at 7:30 in the morning. People know not to do it at 3:30 in the afternoon when the school's letting out and everything else going on. So I think we use it prudently. Again, we certainly welcome to look at it in several more years with our master plan, but we would appreciate if the city would keep the middle block crossing in its current state for the near future. And certainly be able to answer any questions you might have on it.
So the city would be responsible for putting the pavement markings down? And
Well, the city has been doing it for 50 years already. I'm kind of dating myself too, so we'd anticipate that continuing. I don't know if they do it every year or not, or what their kind of the cycle program is on that, or any other crosswalks or other mid-block crossings that you have. Max or Doug probably do know the answer to that. I just don't know.
It depends on the road. The main arteries like Washington Street and Paradise and River Road, Main Street, those are arterial roads. So we use epoxy, thank you. We use epoxy pavement markings because you don't have to renew them as often. And anytime you do construction or you do pavement markings, you have to impact traffic. So we try to minimize that using epoxy pavement marking. And then on all the other roads, we use latex pavement marking. So this one would be one of those that is in our epoxy pavement marking program. So it's about every 3 years or something like that.
thank you.
Thanks, Max. I'll make a thank you, Martin. Yep.
Our project would install the pavement markings at the time next year when we build the project, and then it would just be maintenance of it. Thank you.
And you say this might be temporary based on whatever happens with the PAC and all that?
Yes, until such time as the area is redeveloped.
Just a comment. Shame on me for not noticing that crosswalk. And it's 30 miles an hour there, so it's not particularly fast. But boy, you're kind of taking your life in your hands if you're using that thing. That's my view on it.
And that's been the concern of the city because you're not used to looking for those crosswalks. I know it is signed well, and the improvements which is exactly the point to this project, is to improve the safety of the pedestrian crossings on that corridor.
Going to keep it, we should improve it.
What are the improvements? Are there going to be lights like over on North Main Street? You have the pedestrian crossing where you can push the lights. Is that one of the improvements?
I think the improvement is we would refresh the signs with current reflectivity. We would refresh the pavement marking, and then we would place those yellow detectable warning fields to alert pedestrians that they're beginning to step off the sidewalk onto the street, and then adjust grades of the sidewalks. So it would be kind of maintaining the existing, bringing it up to ADA standards. I could also have our traffic safety engineer, Tom Heidel, review it to see if any additional signing would be appropriate, or if what's there currently meets standards. But we're not proposing any beacons or other expensive items, which I always like to see them go in, but I understand that that's not part of what the curb ramp standalone project is tasked to do. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. It pays to remember the first conversation is there's been no significant crashes or pedestrians, and we've had pedestrians right down the block, significant pedestrian accidents right down the block at the intersection of Indiana. So the people who are utilizing this are well aware and take that care. So I'll make a motion that we establish the mid-block crossing with the between the county courthouse and 333 at the, I'm sure by the time we bring this forward to council, we'll have exact measurements of where the crossing is to bring forward.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Bill. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that passes 4-0. I will thank everyone for their patience tonight, everyone's hard work. Kevin, thank you for the reports. I appreciate it. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we're adjourned.